George Santos is out from Congress after a historic vote that unified Republicans and Democrats somehow. It's amazing how that works. We're going to talk about what the facts are on the ground and a little bit of a theory that I've come up with about George Santos. And, well, I don't think that's all completely on the up and up, especially in the Santos sphere either. I've got some theories about him similar to the ones that I have about Marjorie Taylor Greene, but we'll talk about that, what's happening there, and what we do with that. In other news, Jim Comer releases direct monthly payments to Joe Biden from Hunter's Corporation. Now, the mainstream media comes out and tells us that these are just repayments for a car loan that he took over while Hunter was between jobs. But as many people are pointing out, why are they coming out of a business and not from personal? But we'll go over some of that, what that means and where we go with that. The inmate who stabbed Derek Chauvin turns out to be an FBI informant. Now, the mainstream media again is telling us that everything's on the up and up and don't concern yourself with this and everything is fine, but we'll go over what that means, what's happening there, and where we go with that. And as promised in the solo video earlier on in the week, we will go over Act 10. We'll talk about what's happening there, what this means, and a little bit more of what's on the ground for that. We'll actually read the articles instead of my initial take. So definitely come back for that. It's going to be all of this and more over here on Contemporary. So grab some friends, strap yourselves in, grab a snack, get some people in here, and let's have a conversation about what's going on in the news. And, oh holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. There is nothing that will get you panic clicking like realizing after you've hit the live button that you didn't set up your Rumble stream at all. Like I got through, I got live, I got the YouTube announcement out, and I realized because I went to go back and put the Rumble announcement out and set that up too. I'm like, oh, I didn't set Rumble up today. And actually, if you're watching on Kick right now or back on the replay, you're actually still seeing Fallout Friday. But I don't get a lot of people over on Kick either, so I'm not sure what's going to go on with that, but we might get some people in here expecting to see Fallout tonight. We'll see what's happening in the chat with that, but we do have a lot of news to go over here today. Kissinger kicked off, and immediately the chances of world peace went up. A very, very slight percent, but just a little bit anyway. We'll be talking about Kissinger and his storied career, what it is that he's done. George Santos, obviously, the title card. Burgum is out of the presidential race. We'll go over some of that. The Comer car payment reimbursement that I almost wonder if they didn't already expect that to come out, like they knew about that and they were already circling the wagons about that. We'll be going over that. The Arizona inmate and Derek Chauvin and what's happening there. Act 10. A lot of stuff going on. We even have some Israel stuff here today, so we'll be going over some of that. What's going on with that? Plus, I've got things I like and things that I hate, including, by the way, in things that I like. You may have noticed there's something missing from behind me here. We'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the show in things that I like. So that's going to be a fantastic time. Looking forward to spending the next couple hours with you and see what happens and what we talk about in the news today. And let's go ahead and get started. Are you ready? Ready, set. Let's get my face off of the screen here before we do that, because I still had the restream up here, and let's go. Let's get started. So, our top story today, by the way, before we get started, I will say, feel free to chat in live chat, no matter where it is that you are watching on Rumble. I do read all the chats in between topics, sometimes in the middle of the article as well. Sometimes when the Mogwai says something funny, I just laugh out loud with it. But you can check out on Rumble, you can chat along, tell me what it is that you think about what we're doing here. And yeah, I'll read and respond as we go. All right, let's get started with Reuters today. Henry Kissinger, dominant U.S. diplomat of Cold War era, dies at age 100. That's right. That miserable old war pig lived 100 years. What's your excuse? From Steve Holland and Arshad Mohammed. Henry Kissinger, the most powerful U.S. diplomat of the Cold War era, who helped Washington open up to China, one of his many faults, forge arms control deals with the Soviet Union, and end the Vietnam War. Probably with a tear in his eyes, by the way. What? No more war? How can we do this? How can we have no more war? Who was always reviled by critics over human rights, has died at age 100. Kissinger, a German-born Jewish refugee, whose career took him from academia to diplomacy. We are on YouTube. I cannot comment on that line. I will tell you that right off the bat. We are on YouTube and Twitch. There is no way I can comment on that first sentence. Because I would like to keep my YouTube channel at some point, or for some distance. That's not just a hard strike that gets you a little warning and a couple weeks off. Like, to make the comment on that first sentence right there, that's like insta-ban on YouTube. And who remained an active voice in foreign policy into his later years, died at his home in Connecticut on Wednesday, his geopolitical consulting firm Kissinger Associates said. Yeah, he was advising to Biden and Trump, like right up until the end. Like, he was pulling foreign policy advisement this year. Kissinger was at the height of his powers during the 70s, in the middle of the Cold War, when he served as the National Security Advisor and Secretary of State under Nixon. After Nixon's resignation in '74 amid the Watergate scandal, he remained a diplomatic force. As Secretary of State under Jerry Ford, Kissinger was the architect of the U.S. diplomatic opening with China, a landmark U.S.-Soviet arms control talks, expanded ties between Israel and its Arab neighbors, and the Paris Peace Accords with North Vietnam. While many hailed Kissinger for his brilliance and statesmanship, others branded him a war criminal for his support of anti-communist dictatorships. Especially in Latin America, in his latter years, his travels were circumscribed by efforts to some countries to arrest or question him about past U.S. foreign policy, which, I mean, let's be completely realistic here, that might not have been the worst thing for the world at that point. And it wasn't just, by the way, anti-communist dictatorships, especially in Latin America. It wasn't just Latin America. Syria, that was all Kissinger. A lot of people come back and try to blame the Clintons, blame the Obamas for that. That was all Henry Kissinger. Iraq, Kissinger. Afghanistan, Kissinger. Vietnam, you guessed it. Although he was only on the tail end of that because that was going on for years prior to him coming into the diplomatic side of things. He didn't do Korea, obviously, because, well, he was way too young for diplomacy at the time and to be in the government at some point. And yes, he has been advising, again, like this was up until the bitter end. He was advising on the conflict in Israel that's happening like as we speak and is only 8 weeks old. And he had a big hand in what we're doing in the Ukraine right now too, so. Earlier, Biden's national security spokesman John Kirby said of Kissinger, whether you saw eye to eye with him on every issue, There's no question that he shaped foreign policy decisions for decades, and he certainly had an impact on America's role in the world. Kissinger won the 1973 Nobel Peace Prize for ending the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War, but it was one of the most controversial ever. 2 Nobel. Really? That was the most controversial ever? More controversial than Barack Obama, who has the record for most innocent children bombed by a Nobel Peace Prize holder? Oh wait, no, we can't say that's controversial because of, again, things I can't say on YouTube. 2 Nobel Committee members resigned over the selection as questions arose about the secret U.S. bombing of Cambodia. North Vietnamese diplomat Le Duc Tho, selected to share the award, declined it. As tributes poured in from around the world, Beijing called him a good old friend of the Chinese, who made historic contributions to normalizing relations between the two countries. So, when your production job gets shipped over to China, it's that guy right there. Vladimir Putin praised Kissinger as a wise and far-sighted statesman, while Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said his meetings with Kissinger provided a masterclass in statesmanship. Bangladeshi Foreign Minister Abdul Momen, however, recalled Kissinger's role in the bloody 1971 war between the West and East Pakistan that led eventually to East Pakistan becoming an independent Bangladesh. Henry Kissinger has been an iconic diplomat, but unfortunately in 1971 he was dead against the people of the then East Pakistan. Momen told WION News, that's very sad for such a smart man to do such inhumane things. He should have apologized to the people of Bangladesh for what he has done. Yeah, like one of these war pigs is ever going to apologize for what they've done. And that'd be like saying that HW should have apologized for Iraq 1. Yeah, he probably should have, but he's never going to. So, Henry Kissinger, he has passed away. But I had one more interesting article, and then a couple of very, 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 very last minute things for him. I've got one from Politico magazine, not Politico News. Henry Kissinger's maybe last interview dropped the two-state solution. And again, as I mentioned, he, up to the bitter end, in the last 8 weeks, he was doing foreign policy, foreign diplomacy. Rolf Dobelli reporting. When I spoke with Henry Kissinger on October 18th, I didn't know it would be one of the last, perhaps the last interviews he'd ever do. I talked with him via Zoom as part of a World Minds gathering. There were 25 people on the call, including historians Niall Ferguson and Stephen Kotkin, investor Bill Ackman, artist and architect Neri Oxman, and former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. Several participants asked him whether the questions published below. The interview was Chatham House rules, so the questioners are not identified by name, but Kissinger agreed to give his responses on the record. Some of this here, I'm only going to gloss over a little bit of this. Understandably, Israel is reacting with full force against Hamas. If you, Kissinger, were in Netanyahu's shoes, would you have reacted differently? Well, I'm not in Netanyahu's shoes, so I cannot judge for all the forces that impinge on him. I'm in favor of a peaceful outcome. Bullshit. I don't see a peaceful outcome with Hamas involved in the conflict. I would favor negotiations between the Arab world and Israel. I do not see, especially after these events, that direct negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians are very fruitful. And this is the more interesting one. Can there ever be lasting peace in the Middle East without a two-state solution? A formal peace doesn't guarantee a lasting peace. The difficulty of the two-state solution is shown by the experience of Hamas. Gaza was made quasi-independent by Prime Minister Ariel Sharon in order to test the possibility of a two-state solution. It has led, in fact, to a much more complex situation. It has become so much worse in the last 2 years than it has been in 2005. So the two-state solution doesn't guarantee that what we saw in the last weeks won't happen again. And I have opined on that excessively because, again, as I remind you, while Gaza was technically an independent state, technically, by all forms of technical independence, their own government, which was Hamas, and everything else that went along with that, technically, we're already in a two-state solution, but Hamas depended on Israel for all their electricity, fresh water, and most of their trade, in spite of having the massive coastline that they had. Well, not massive, but massive compared to the size of their little sliver of land that they had there. If you want to come back out and try to declare independence by force and by hostage capturing, you should probably have your own power plant first. Otherwise, you are at the mercy of people you're taking hostages from. I said this. The first contemporary after the invasion, I said that. But it's interesting because, he's one of the biggest advocates against. And one op-ed from The Hill on the death of Kissinger. Kissinger offered absolution for the sins of American foreign policy. As mentioned above, and was always mentioned when we do an op-ed, the opinions expressed in this article are the opinions of Robert Farley, the opinion contributor, not necessarily the opinions of The Hill, and furthermore, of Turns of Pages Productions Incorporated, your host J. Edgar, or Contemporary. These are solely the opinions of Robert Farley. I can tell you right off the bat that these are not necessarily the opinions of your host, J. Edgar, because typically I sit in the opposite camp of this. Discussion of the legacy of Henry Kissinger was bound to be complex. Many obituaries have been prepared years in advance, a testament to Kissinger's longevity, but also to the polarization of opinion regarding his career. For a figure as deeply feted by the elite as Henry Kissinger, he could arouse truly intense feelings of animosity. The left hated Kissinger for his long history of war crimes. I'm not on the left, and I also hate that. And because he was the living embodiment of a destructive foreign policy blob that would never and could never be brought to account. The right also hated Kissinger, who paid little but lip service to the ideas of American exceptionalism. Kissinger, motivated perhaps by the Hans Morgenthau's injunctions that moral principle cannot be applied to politics, and that no state could hold a monopoly on morality, implicitly rejected the idea that the U.S. was different in any meaningful way from the Soviet Union. Against standards of decent human conduct, Kissinger can truly be found wanting. He facilitated or directed many of the most appalling acts of violence conducted by the U.S. during the 60s and 70s, but against the standards of conduct of American foreign policy officials during and after the Cold War, Kissinger is more difficult to single out. Kissinger played some role in the death of Chilean President Salvador Allende, but he did not authorize the Eisenhower-era coup against Arbenz in Guatemala or Masada in Iran. He may have helped cover up Indonesia's invasion of East Timor, but he was in no way responsible for the murderous bloodletting that marked the transition between Sukarno and Suharto in Indonesia. That is also bullshit, by the way. He may have extended the Vietnam War, but he neither started it nor presided over its most brutal escalations. He may have given absolution to the invasion of Iraq, but the war was planned and executed by those who considered Kissinger a dire enemy. He may have helped catalyze Cambodia's collapse into chaos and genocide, but he did not give the go-ahead for the elimination of the Gaddafi regime. Again, that's bullshit. In the onset of Libya's lost decade, he facilitated the bombing of Cambodia, but he never ordered a drone strike. The reality is that while Kissinger was distinguished at times in terms of his diplomatic flexibility, little of what he did was particularly controversial within the foreign policy community at the time. The answer to the question is it worth sacrificing Dhaka in order to win Beijing? Would have been answered with a resounding yes by the greater portion of the foreign policy community in '72. General Mao and his cohorts had slaughtered 40 million or more during the 60s, and what were a few 100,000 Pakistanis to be added to the tally. It would be wrong to say Kissinger simply gave voice to the foreign policy community. He was undoubtedly a dynamic actor within it and effectively pursued the ends that he sought, but it would also be wrong to claim that any of his actions were somehow alien to the norms of that community. So, this person here seems to be all in on trying to preserve a legacy of peace for Kissinger. I see through it. Kissinger was a war pig, and he was responsible for a lot of the warmongering that went around the world at the hands of the United States, from both parties. He was just as evil with the Clintons as he was with the Bushites. And he will be remembered for being famous and also for being infamous. He gets a mark of a D for me for foreign policy. I'll never wish harm on anybody, especially on YouTube, because they'll take your video down for that. But what I will say with Kissinger, especially, I don't think we're in a position to be in world peace right now, but I think we got a little bit closer now that he's gone. So, I hope you find some absolution in your next life, Kissinger. I don't think you will, but I hope you do. Alright, let's talk Santos, the title card of this episode. And we're going to start with a pair from CBS. CBS News reporting George Santos expelled from Congress in historic House vote. From Caitlin Yilek and Melissa Quinn. The House on Friday voted to expel embattled Republican Rep. George Santos from Congress, bringing an end to a tumultuous tenure in Washington that was defined by scandal from the start. We'll talk about that in just a bit. In their third attempt to oust him since May, House lawmakers voted 311 to 114 in favor of the expulsion resolution, including 105 Republicans who voted for it. Hong Kong. 2 Democrats voted against expelling Santos because, well, the next time there's a majority, they're going to face down the same shit. 2 members voted present and 8 members did not vote. The resolution required 2/3 majority to pass. Santos left the House chamber during the vote. The clerk will notify the governor of the state of New York of the action of the House. Speaker Mike Johnson announced from the House dais. The chair announces that in light of the expulsion of the gentleman from New York, Mr. Santos, the whole number of the House is 434. Kathy Hochul, a Democrat, said on social media following the vote that she's prepared to undertake the solemn responsibility of filling the vacancy, which she doesn't. She can't do, by the way. Just a reminder of that. Santos is a representative. Arising from Santos' removal, adding, the people of Long Island deserve nothing less. Oh, she can do a special election. I was going to say, no, this isn't the Senate. She doesn't just appoint somebody. She has up to 10 days to call a special election for the seat, and it must be set for within 70 to 80 days for the governor's order. Otherwise, again, that seat goes unfilled. By Friday afternoon, the locks on the doors to Santos' congressional office have been changed and his House website removed. A sign outside the former office now reads, Office of the 3rd Congressional District of New York. Dozens of Santos' colleagues were apparently swayed by a damning report from the House Ethics Committee released 2 weeks ago that found that there was substantial evidence that Santos repeatedly broke the law. Santos brazenly embellished his biography to win his seat in Congress last year and now faces nearly 24 federal charges related to the alleged fraud and illegal use of campaign funds. Alright, full stop. I want to talk about this for just a minute. Now, George Santos was embattled from before he was seated, to the point of the people who saw George Santos out there potentially knew about the things that he was doing on his resume, if they indeed turn out to be true. I am going to give the benefit of the doubt to Santos because he's not been tried in a court of law. He's innocent until proven guilty. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt that any of what it is that he said, that he did, or etc., was even true. Until there is a jury trial or a plea deal. I'm going to to stick with, and people call me a fence sitter for this. I'm going to stick with the position that he is innocent. But with that being said, if we do a thought exercise and assume for a second his guilt, if we do this thought exercise, we look at this, we look at what's happening with this, it seems that, especially because this shit started on election day, like the day after he was elected, when he was still congressman-elect, not when he was seated as a congressperson, that they already knew that this happened during the campaign. And I mean, some of this goes back to the things with Marjorie Taylor Greene, too. They can be argued with Greene that she didn't get on anybody's radar until she filed the articles of impeachment the first time against Biden. But sometimes I question that, too, because I do think that I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is a plant. And I have a lot of suspicion about George Santos, too. If you've got an entire media apparatus that on the Wednesday after George Santos becomes congressman-elect can suddenly come out and tell you, hey, this is what's on his resume. Look at this. Oh my God, look at this. He said that he was Jewish when he wasn't Jewish. That's anti-Semitism. Don't you guys hate anti-Semites? He said that he was a successful businessman. He said he graduated from somewhere he never graduated to. Where the fuck was this during the primaries, if this is all true? That's a legitimate question. Where was this during the primaries, if what you're telling me is true? Where was this before the general election, if what you're telling me is true? The mainstream media is the propaganda arm of the Democratic wing, dead set on getting Democrats elected. If this guy has made it through his primary and is facing off against a Democrat, wouldn't you think it's your obligation, especially if you knew, because you're able to come back out here and start spewing this the day after election day? It almost seems to me like the absence of putting this out here means that you wanted him to get elected, which tells me, honestly, this seems so much like a setup to me. And I say the same thing about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I've been open about that. Again, we have all these videos. The AR-15 pointing it at the squad. Oh my God! And that was during the campaign season. That was before she was ever seated as a congressperson. It's not like she was doing this kind of stuff as a congressperson, but weirdly enough, none of this stuff came out until after she was seated as a congressperson. There is some benefit of the doubt to be had, again, because nobody thought that she'd be the firebrand that she was until she filed the articles of impeachment day one, as soon as she was sitting in her seat. But it seems more to me like either they blatantly ignore the fact that she was doing this because they wanted her in, because they wanted a MAGA punching bag. She's one of them. Or they were setting this all up so they can maybe get her expelled as well. I know there have been plenty of calls to get her expelled. That's a little bit more of a good luck in one of the reddest districts in Georgia, but there we have it. Even if you did have a Democrat governor and a Democratic legislature, which you don't have in Georgia, go back, call a special election, and get a Democrat elected for that district, that person would not survive the incumbency. Not in that district. But this all seems like this is too perfect. Like this was wanted to do. Is Santos one of them? Is Santos a Democrat who ran as a Republican so we could start this controversy and mold the conversation? I don't know. But I would say that the chances are not zero for that either. I maybe wouldn't say that they're 50-50 even, but I would say that they are not zero. But he is out. The bipartisan vote makes Santos just the 6th House member in U.S. history to be expelled, and the first in more than 20 years. Rep. James Traficant was removed from office in 2002 after being convicted of 10 corruption-related felonies. And that's the other side of that, too. Traficant in 2002 was removed after conviction, after he had his day in court. Santos is being punished before anything can even be filed against him. Now, my real question, especially if he actually executed all this fraud that they say that he did, will he get a trial? I am not going to say no, he's not going to get a trial. I will say that I'll be very surprised if he does. So, that is what we have for that. I got another one here from CBS. Why was Santos expelled from the House? Here are the charges and allegations against him. From Caitlin Yalick. This is going to be a little bit of a review because we've been talking about this since the day that Santos was seated. Rep. Santos of New York was expelled from the House in a bipartisan vote on Friday, with dozens of Republican colleagues joining Democrats and ousting him from Congress, making the margin even razor thinner, by the way. Santos has been the center of overlapping scandals since he won election last year, and he faces a slew of federal charges related to alleged fraud and campaign finance violations. The explosive allegations were detailed in a pair of federal indictments handed down earlier this year from the House Ethics Committee, issued its own scathing report earlier this month. Santos refused repeated calls for his resignation and survived 2 prior attempts to remove him from office. The first attempt was led by Democrats in May after he was originally indicted by the DOJ. Republicans renewed the expulsion effort in October following the superseding indictment. But Friday's vote of 311 to 114 made it clear that his support among many of his Republican colleagues had eroded. Alright, here's what you need to know about the allegations. Soon after Santos won a surprising victory in the 2022 midterm election, social media outlets began uncovering a multitude of lies he told about his life story, kicking off months of public scrutiny from his background. And when they say soon after, they mean, again, as I pointed out, the day after. One day, that Wednesday. His campaign also attracted the attention of federal prosecutors on May 10th. The DOJ announced 13 federal charges against him, which are likely to get dropped, including wire fraud, money laundering, theft of public funds, and making false statements to Congress. The charges stemmed from fraudulent schemes and brazen misrepresentations that were meant to enrich Santos as he ran for Congress, said the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, Breon Peace. The indictment outlined 3 schemes that Santos was allegedly involved in. Prosecutors say that Santos defrauded campaign donors by inducing them to contribute to a limited liability company that he controlled, and then used the money for his personal expenses, including luxury designer clothing, credit card payments, and car payments. In the second scheme, Santos applied for the unemployment insurance benefits from New York State in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the indictment, Santos falsely told labor officials he was unemployed, even though he was earning $120,000 a year from a Florida-based investment firm, the indictment said. Yeah, no. That there I wouldn't believe. An unemployed congressperson? An unemployed political activist. But he was a Republican, not a libertarian. Prosecutors also alleged Santos misled Congress about his financial circumstances on disclosure statements as he filed as part of his congressional campaigns in October. Prosecutors hit Santos with an additional 10 counts that accused him of conspiracy to commit offenses against the U.S. wire fraud, making false statements to the Federal Election Commission, falsifying records, aggravated identity theft, and access device fraud. In total, are you ready for the stats? Santos is charged with 1 count of conspiracy to commit offenses against the United States, which is a bullshit charge, by the way. That's a process crime. 2 counts of wire fraud. 2 counts of making materially false statements to the Federal Elections Committee, process crime. 2 counts of falsifying records submitted to obstruct the FEC. 2 counts of aggravated identity theft. 1 count of access device fraud, 7 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, 1 count of theft of public funds, 2 counts of making materially false statements to the U.S. House of Representatives. Let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 7. 7 of these are process crimes. 7 of these are what he did in the midst of them investigating him. But these will also sit out there if, for whatever reason, he does get charged and goes to his day in court, and they can't prove anything else off of this. They'll come pull these up and say, "You made a false statement to the U.S. House of Representatives. How do you plead, Mr. Santos?" In the second indictment, prosecutors accused Santos of stealing his campaign donors' identities and racking up thousands of dollars in unauthorized charges on their credit cards to benefit his campaign and himself personally. Some of the money was transferred to his own bank account, prosecutors said. So, that's what he's facing down. And again, the thing with the identity thing, that's what's always bothered me, because this was apparently going on before Election Day, into the primaries and before that. And our friends in the mainstream media knew enough about it to report it on the day after Election Day, which means that they sat on this until after Election Day. And I want to know why. So, let's see, what else do we have here? A little bit of an opinion on what's happening. I think I have to archive this one. We'll skip that one for now. The Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness, superseding on something we talked about in the first article about Santos. Santos was expelled. What happens next with his House seat? From Missy Kambagska, Amy B. Wang, Mariana Alfaro, Ozzy Pabera, and Megan Vasquez. How many people does it take to write an article? The House on Friday voted to expel Santos, we know that. How will his seat be filled? Under New York law, the vacancy of Santos' seat requires New York Governor Kathy Hochul to call for a special election within 10 days of the vacancy, which we are probably running up on that at least halfway point at some point. After the House voted to expel Santos on Friday, Hochul said in a social media post that she will announce the date for the special election within the 10 days the state law requires. I take this responsibility seriously, and I'm committed to ensuring there will be a member of Congress who can serve Nassau and the Queens counties, Hochul said. State law requires a special election be between 70 and 80 days after the governor's call for one, so with Hochul's expected announcement to come by December 11th, the special election is likely to take place in mid to late February. So, essentially, well, I guess the person will get almost a year, whoever it is. Which is interesting too, because a lot of times when we get an expulsion or a resignation, the seat just sits vacant. They don't typically go back and replace them, especially in an election year. But it does happen. We saw, Myra Flores got picked up in a special election in Texas before they redistricted her back out of her district. That was done on a special election. That still happened on an election year. So there is that aspect of things that goes as well. So we'll see what happens with that. And I would be interested to see what happens then with that seat, if it does stay as a red seat or if it goes blue because of the sour taste in the mouth of Santos, which again runs me back to the idea of, was this some sort of setup, or what happens with this and what actually happened with this. The Democrat and Republican Party's leadership in Queens and Nassau, where the 3rd district is, will select the candidates to run in the special election. New York law does not require a formal primary to produce candidates to fill a vacant House seat, again, that's important. That's been one thing that I've been bringing up since the calls to expel Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert came up, especially the calls to expel AOC, which I've defended her on that, and Ilhan Omar. I'm not a fan of Congress expelling members, because they're representatives of their district. To me, that should be between them and the people that they represent, whether or not they get expelled. Not members of districts thousands of miles away. And being in Long Island, I mean, there were people in California that were gunning for this guy, and I don't think they should have a say. Now, do I think if all of this is true again, that the people of Nassau and Queens should have picked better? Yes, I do. If all of this is true, of course. But it's between them and their representative. Now, to go one further, honestly, I do think, and I know that there's not a constitutional mechanism for this, for a recall of a congressperson, only expulsion by Congress themselves. If you get, and again, we're going to go on the thought experiment that everything that Santos was accused of is true. If you get a guy in there who's lied to you about his resume to get into the position that he's in, who defrauded you as the charges go, and again, if all of this winds up being true, there should be a mechanism for your district to say, hey, fuck this guy, get him out of here. This guy sucks. He lied to us. We don't want him representing us. He doesn't represent us. We thought he did, and then the reality of him came out. There is not currently a mechanism to do that in the U.S. Congress, or I'm sorry, in the U.S. Constitution, but I think there should be, because it is between you and the people you represent, whether or not you're there. And I'll say the same thing about AOC. As much as I disagree with her, as much as I think she is poisoning the well of Congress, that's between her and her district, Ilhan Omar. I disagree with almost everything that Ilhan Omar says. She has come out with some very base things, but they are extremely few and far between. That's between her and District 5 in Minnesota. I encourage them to pick better, but that's their choice. As far as Derek Von Orden in my district, I've got my inhibitions about him, but it's between him and the people of my district right now. And I don't think that somebody from Portland should make that decision for me. So, that is what happens to that seat, and we will follow the special election. And again, I'm also going to be following what ultimately happens with this, because I got the sneaking suspicion he's not going to see trial. That's just me. One of the interesting articles for this, because, you know, when they do some of these laws here, they have a person in mind. They try to say, oh, that's going to be for everybody. But they have one person in mind. It's like when they say, a twice impeached president should not be buried in Arlington, and we want to pass a bill for that. Well, there's only one of those. We know who you're talking about. Unless Johnson pulls his head out of his ass and impeaches Biden twice, there's only one of those. Santos-inspired bill would ban pensions for expelled lawmakers, from Andrew Solendar. I would take that a lot further if it was me, but that's because I don't like the fact that Congresspeople enrich themselves after leaving office by having their pension for the rest of their lives. A House Republican on Monday introduced legislation barring lawmakers who are expelled from Congress from receiving congressional pensions. It's a direct response to the House's expulsion last week of George Santos, who was accused of plundering his congressional campaign coffers to personally enrich himself. Zach Nunn of Iowa announced the Congressional Pension Accountability Act at a press conference on Monday morning. Nunn was among the more than 100 Republicans who voted to expel Santos following the release of a bombshell House Ethics Committee report. Among these allegations in the report was that Santos used campaign funds for personal expenses, including hotel fees, luxury goods, and cosmetics. No one should be serving in Congress, be excommunicated and removed from Congress, and still be able to draw a pension, Nunn told reporters. A pension is earned for honorable service, Nunn continued. When you're removed from office, you should not be able to continue to cash in on the American taxpayer's dime. Yes, but Santos himself isn't eligible for congressional pension, having served less than a year in office. Right, but this is going to be symbolic. Members of Congress are generally eligible for a pension if they've served for 5 or more years, according to Congressional Research Service. Still, Nunn says he wants to create a clear roadmap for future cases and noted that prior federal service can count towards a lawmaker's eligibility. So, and again, this is... they're making an example out of somebody who wouldn't have qualified for this in the first place. Now, I am not a fan of congressional pension, especially for the Senate. Because, as they say, 5 or more years, you automatically get pension for life as soon as you step out of the office. So, if you want to make a benefit for people who did honorably serve, 3 terms as a House, as a representative, or 1 term as a senator, whichever it is. For people who honorably did serve there and get their congressional pension, I guess for me, especially with the amount of debt that we're racked up in this country, maybe move that until they're the actual retirement age to qualify for Social Security, 65. Because if they're able-bodied when they leave Congress, then to me, I still think they should be working. But they will continue to do things symbolically to remind you that Santos was disgraced. On the other side of this, what is Santos going to do for making money? George Santos is now on Cameo. How much is the former congressman making? Who cares? Fetterman actually got a... He got a good little jab out of this one. And I'm a little impressed for Fetterman, too. Anthony Robledo reporting. Santos has a way of keeping everyone asking, is this real? The ousted congressman has quickly landed himself some new income as a Cameo creator days after his expulsion in a 311 to 114 bipartisan vote. Screenshots of the former House representative joining the video sharing website circulated shortly after the vote, and Cameo confirmed the account's verification to Wired. A link to the page is now displayed on Santos' official X, formerly Twitter, account. Former congressional icon, his Cameo bio reads, the expelled member of Congress from New York City. Santos' Cameo page charges $200 per video. I cannot think of any reason that I would want George Santos to be the one to deliver my message. While initially charging $75 for a personalized video, Santos has nearly tripled his value. For $200, anyone can request a personalized video to be sent directly to them. Videos range from a birthday or holiday wish to even gossip, roast session, or pep talk. He currently holds a 5-star rating and has less than 30 video requests left as of Monday afternoon. So, what was interesting about this, and I thought I had the article up, but I guess I don't, but almost immediately after Santos joined Cameo, Senator Fetterman was right out there to turn this back around on Bob Menendez, who is facing several charges of his own in the Senate over in New Jersey, calling on him to resign as well. Again, I still think that's between Bob Menendez and the people of New Jersey. But it's funny that he's able to turn around and use this moment to troll. I disagree with John Fetterman politically on just about everything that he has to say. But I will give credit where credit is due. In spite of having the stroke and having the diminished mental capacity, that dude can troll. I am impressed by that much, at least. So, that's what we have going on for that. Speaking of Menendez, John Fetterman We have a colleague in the Senate that's actually done much more sinister kinds of things. He needs to go. If you're going to expel Santos, how can you allow Menendez to remain in the Senate? Menendez is really a senator for Egypt, not New Jersey. Let's have a listen to what Fetterman has to say.
And you've also been calling to get rid of Menendez, I know. But first, before we talk about that, what's your reaction to the expulsion?
Well, it's like I'm not surprised, but to me, I think the more important picture is that we have a colleague in the Senate that actually did much more sinister and serious kinds of things. Senator Menendez, he needs to go. And if you are going to expel Santos, how can you allow to somebody like Menendez to remain in the Senate? And Santos's kind of lies were almost funny, and he landed on the moon and that kind of stuff. Whereas I think Menendez is really a senator for Egypt, not New Jersey. So I really think he needs to go, and especially it's kind of strange that if Santos is not allowed to remain in the House, someone like that. Yeah.
Are you though uncomfortable with the fact that there hasn't been an adjudication, that while he's been charged, there hasn't been a conviction? With Menendez.
I am. And it's like he has the right for his day in court and all that, but he doesn't have the right to have those kind of votes and things that's not a right. And I think we need to make that kind of decision to send him out.
Yeah. But you've also got to call the ethics committee up. You've got to call a vote for that, and get enough people in to come back out and say, yes, we agree with this, while you're sitting on a razor-thin margin. Now, as far as Menendez goes, and with Santos being expelled, a lot of people brought up the fact that Al Franken resigned right away. Well, Al Franken resigned because he was a senator from Minnesota, which means that the governor of Minnesota turned around and nominated another Democrat to sit in his place, who would vote the exact same way that the Democrat and Progressive Party line wanted him to vote. They lost nothing in Minnesota. Menendez, again, it's New Jersey. He's going to get replaced by another Democrat. But for that time, while he's expelled until the state legislature, if I remember correctly, it's a state legislature pick in New Jersey. Don't quote me on that. Because for the Senate, it's, depending on the state, it's a state legislature. I don't think there's any state that does special election, but it's the state legislature or the governor at that point. I don't know what the hell just happened and why my monitor, like half of my monitor for Twitch just popped up on the other screen. That was weird. I guess we'll figure out what's happening with that, but regardless, blue legislature and blue governor in New Jersey, yes, Bob Menendez is getting replaced by a Democrat, so his seat is safe. But for that amount of time, they're going to be on a razor-thin majority where they literally cannot lose a single vote. So do keep that in mind as they go. Thank you for the resub, by the way, Mogwai. When we were in the midst of watching the video, I did check over on the monitors and see that you resubscribed, so thank you very much for that. Mogwai has been subscribed for 7 months, by the way. And has gifted out countless other subs, too. So, thank you. Mogwai is actually making this this venture over on Twitch a little bit profitable. So, thank you for that. And the last thing we do before we move off Santos is a Chad move from Santos. I no longer have to answer. Santos rejects press after expulsion. Let's listen.
As unofficially already no longer a member of Congress, I no longer have to answer a single question. That is the one thing that I'm going to take forever.
Chad move. And again, I can disagree with Santos all that I want, and still recognize a Chad move off of that one. No, screw you. I don't have to answer your questions anymore. Fuck off. All right. Let's Get the live chats back up here. I see that we've got some chatter from the Mogwai over here. How is Joy Behar still alive? She's 300 years old, but most of her face is below 21. Well, that's actually, by the way, an interesting concept, because it's the same reason that as much as boomers would want to see this, Dolly Parton cannot star in adult films because most of her body is under 18. The ghost of Behar, old nose, is causing havoc. I look for quality content. I landed here. Well, the search continues. Yes, it does. All right, let's talk about Burgum. Some things on the presidential race from CNN. Doug Burgum announces he's suspending his 2024 presidential campaign, and most of the country looks up and says, "Who?" From Veronica Strakwalersi over at CNN. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum announced Monday he's suspending his long-shot campaign for president. Side note for this, his eyebrows are continuing to campaign. Doug himself is gone, but his eyebrows are continuing to campaign. After failing to gain traction among voters and appearing unlikely to qualify for the 4th GOP debate this week. Oh shit, that's right, that's happening this week. Well, we'll watch that on this channel. Sorry, it's been just a touch stressful with what happened with the family emergency that I've forgotten all about. The one debate, there was no way that I could, because there was a major event that was happening the next day that, again, I won't talk about on here, but because it does involve family. If my mom ever wants to come on and comment and say what happens, that's fine. But she's got to discuss it and figure out whether or not it's appropriate. I'm not going to say it without permission. But yeah, I mean, I watched the debate and I live tweeted it a little bit, but I couldn't sit back and stream it like I usually could. But that'll change for the next one, for the 4th one. We'll see how much they have to lie about then. Our decision to run for president came from a place of caring deeply about every American on a mission to reestablish trust in America's leadership and our institutions of democracy, the Republicans said in a statement. While this primary process has shaken my trust in many media organizations, which I can't believe for a second that you actually had trust in them, and political party institutions, it has only strengthened my trust in America. Again, I remind you, he said our decision because his eyebrows are running a completely separate campaign from him, and they are still in the race. They have also not qualified for the debate, but they are still in the race. He also criticized the Republican National Committee for its debate requirements that he argued take the power of democracy away from Iowa and New Hampshire voters and nationalize the primary system. The conservative second-term governor, who launched his 2024 bid in June, focused his campaign on the economy, energy, and national security, and warned of China being the number one threat to the U.S. Burgum leaned into his small-town roots and his business background as a former software firm CEO and Microsoft executive. Yes, Doug Burgum is out. His campaign was mostly self-funded because, well, nobody really knew who he was, so there was nobody to really donate to him. There's that avenue to things. And again, still people mostly don't know who he is. Now, I was mildly interested in Doug Burgum. He is more libertarian than most of the RNC. He is, to an extent, populist. I think that he would actually be a good cabinet member in the Trump admin. But I think that North Dakota needs him more at this point. And I do think that he should stay where he's at. He would be a good 2028 pick. I'm going to come right out and say it. He would be a good 2028 pick. I still think it's going to go to DeSantis, unfortunately, but I think he'd be a good 2028 pick. Or Youngkin. Because he is populist, he's self-funded, he's business-minded, and he is actually small government as compared to like a DeSantis or a Haley. So, he is out, unfortunately. I'm not going to play the song for him because I actually liked him. kind of wish he would have stayed longer, and I wish the rules would have been relaxed, especially with so many people that are out now, that he could have still gone up on the stage and debated. I would have liked to see more from Burgum, and I don't think we've necessarily seen the last of him either. Mogwai says, I love these suspensions. It's like the little schools playing in March Madness and then getting beat by Duke. You know, I'm not a basketball person. I've made brackets before, but I don't know enough about basketball to make an informed decision about that. So I actually can't come back and say anything to that comment either because I don't know enough about basketball. Mogwai says, I'd vote for his eyebrows. It's weird the right one is anti-abortion. The left one gives out gift certificates for coat hangers at Lamaze classes. I really need to learn to read these comments before I say them out loud. That was dark. That was so dark, the property value just dropped. In DeSantis land, another one from CNN, DeSantis Super PAC chairman steps down in another high-profile departure. From Steve Contorno, Adam Laxalt, one of Florida man Ron DeSantis' closest friends in politics, is stepping down from his role as chairman of the Super PAC, supporting the Republicans' presidential campaign, a source with knowledge of the move confirmed. Laxalt, who was roommates with DeSantis during naval officer training, joined Never Back Down in April, shortly after its launch and before the Florida governor launched his campaign for president. So he, as the CEO of the Never Back Down Super PAC, has backed down. The move put a key ally on the board of the Super PAC that had an unusually outsized role in supporting the presidential candidate. Laxalt brought a wealth of campaign experience in the early nominating state of Nevada, having served as his AG before running unsuccessfully for governor and the U.S. Senate. Laxalt's departure is effective immediately, he told Never Back Down board in a letter provided to CNN by request, and first reported by the New York Times, a former newspaper. After nearly 26 straight months of being a full-scale campaign, I need to return my time and attention to my family and law practices, Laxalt wrote. Let's be realistic. Laxalt looked at the numbers and said, there's no effing way that this is going to happen, and I'm going to be tied for the rest of my life to a campaign that turned on Trump, essentially. And if I continue with this, because the person I'm campaigning for doesn't have the good sense to drop out right now like he should, then my name is going to be as much mud as his, and any campaign that I work on in the future is going to fail just by my association with DeSantis. This was probably a smart move, and this may save his ability to campaign later on for other candidates. I don't think he's going to be in the government anymore, but I think that he's going to continue to be a force in campaigning. I do. But the writing is on the wall. I mean, DeSantis, I'm going to make a video about this, I think, tonight or tomorrow. I wanted to wait until Contemporary because, I wanted some of you guys to be surprised by what you see back here. But I do want to talk about some shakeup that could happen in the primaries based on things that I've done in primaries before, and where I think the primaries are actually going to be a bit closer than we think they are. But I still think that the Donald is going to come out on top. I do. Which is a shame because we're going to have to go spend a bunch more money to keep Democrats out of office. Because all they have to do is go up to them and say, hey, you might become unpopular. No, it's not too soon. I just need to learn to read those before I say them out loud. And the thing with DeSantis too is, he's losing tons of high-level people too. It's not just the low levels that he kicked out when he had to resize his campaign. When DeSantis came out of the barrel running because he got a ton of donations right off in the beginning. And he thought that that was just going to be continual over and over again. He didn't budget for the fact that his support could drop, his donations could drop. I hate to say it, and I'm not going to name names right now. I thought about quote tweeting this with this, but I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to shame the cultist. And a lot of the DeSantis people are cultists. But over on X, there is a very attractive young woman who is full out DeSantis. She calls herself libertarian, but she's not. To the point that she said, she made a post, and again, not going to name names right now, that said, if you show me proof of a $5 or more donation to DeSantis, I will send you a handwritten thank you letter. Coming from a very attractive girl like that, I'm not going to say the H word, but I'm going to say that that's going to be an aspect of it. All right, we got to talk about Biden. We've talked about the Republicans enough at this point. From the House Oversight Committee itself, because so few people on the mainstream media actually talked about this. Comer releases direct monthly payments to Biden from Hunter's business entity. Today, House Committee on Oversight and Accountability Chairman Jim Comer released subpoenaed bank records revealing Hunter's business entity, Owasco PC, made direct monthly payments to Biden. Hunter is currently under an investigation by the DOJ for using the Owasco PC corporate account for tax evasion and other serious crimes. Now, that's probably a good thing that he did it through the corporate, because if he did it through his personal Venmo account, he'd be on the IRS's radar. Following subpoenas to obtain Biden Family Associates bank records, Chairman Comer issued subpoenas for Hunter and Jim's personal and business bank records. The House Oversight Committee has identified over 20 shell companies and uncovered how the Bidens and their associates raked in over $24 million between 2015 and 2019 by selling Joe Biden as their brand. Financial records obtained show Hunter's business account, Owasco PC, received payments from Chinese state-linked companies and other foreign nationals and companies. Payments to Biden from Hunter's Owasco PC to corporate account are part of a pattern revealing Joe Biden knew about, participated in, and benefited from his family's influence peddling schemes. As the Bidens received millions from foreign nationals and companies in China and Russia, Ukraine, Romania, and Kazakhstan, Biden dined with his family's foreign associates, spoke to them by speakerphone, had coffee, attended meetings, and ultimately received payments that were funded by his family's business dealings. Chairman Comer today released a video outlining the direct payments Biden received from Hunter's Owasco PC bank account and stated the House Oversight Committee will continue to follow the money to ensure accountability for President Biden's involvement in his family's corrupt domestic and international business schemes. So, a breakdown, a TLDR off of this, even though we read this, is that Comer was able to show direct payments from Owasco PC directly to Joe Biden. Now, one of the things I said in the cold open when we were talking about this was the fact that the media probably knew that this was coming, and they probably knew those payments showed up there because they already had a narrative crafted for it the same day. Mogwai says, one of these people are going to be the VP. I'm really thinking Nikki Haley is climbing. No! I mean, I'm already not going to vote for Trump, but if it's going to be Nikki Haley, I will actively campaign against him if she's the VP pick. Now, I'm going to be complete transparent about this because I've said I wouldn't vote for Trump because of the spending. Absolutely not, because of the spending in the first term. I will say, in full disclosure, because I want my partisan leanings to be disclosed, I want you guys to know who you're listening to as far as partisanship goes. I have softened my stance on that slightly because of Ben Carson, because Ben Carson is on the maybe list for VP. And if he does pick Carson to be a running mate, I might actually move him into the maybe pile. I still don't know, because those omnibuses over and over again are still fresh in my mind. And that was the reason that I got off the Trump train, is because of the omnibus over and over again. But I like Dr. Carson. I think that would springboard him into a position where I could vote for him for the actual presidency. And I think it would be a very, very good use of resources. Now, when I go back to the narrative crafting, over from the Washington Post, actually. Again, where democracy goes to die in darkness. There's 2 Washington Post articles in this episode of Contemporary. How does that happen? I can't stand the Washington Post. Also, if you're experiencing lag, I apologize. Apparently my internet is having issues today. I've dropped 2% of my frames today. But have no fear, if you do want to listen to the uninterrupted version, I am recording this at the same time. So you will hear the non-frame dropped version. Tomorrow I will re-upload, well, tonight before I go to bed, but tomorrow you'll get the re-uploaded video that came from the direct recording that didn't come from the stream. And that will be what's on the audio platform as well. So join on Spotify and you hear the entirety of Contemporary. The link will be in the Discord too once it's up. Comer mischaracterizes Hunter car payment reimbursements to his dad. From Jacqueline Alamani and Matt Beiser. Now, this came out yesterday, by the way. And so did this article. The news about the fact that he had the smoking gun about the bank statements. And this article. They had this prepped. They knew this was coming. And they tried to get out ahead of the narrative. As House Republicans move towards a floor vote to authorize an impeachment inquiry against President Biden, House Oversight Chairman Jim Comer has again mischaracterized evidence of payments from Hunter to his father. In an email to reporters, a spokesperson for Comer claimed that the House Oversight Committee, which is investigating Biden, had obtained bank records revealing Hunter's law firm, Owasco PC, which had received payments from Chinese state-linked companies and other foreign companies in the past, made direct monthly payments to Joe Biden. The email claimed the payments are part of a pattern, revealing that Joe Biden knew about, participated in, and benefited from his family's influence peddling schemes. The 3 payments of $1,380 that occurred in September, October, and November of 2018, nearly 2 years after Biden had left the vice presidency, were actually for a 2018 Ford Raptor Biden had purchased that Hunter was using, according to an email verified by Washington Post forensic analysis. That you had out ready the day that Comer dropped this. There Comer goes again, reheating what is old as new to try to revive the sham of investigation. Hunter's attorney Abby Lowell said in a statement, "The truth is that Hunter's father helped him when he was struggling financially due to his addiction and could not secure credit to finance a truck. When Hunter was able to, he paid his father back and took over the payments himself." So I do have some problems with this, and of course we have the payment here over on X. Thanks to Yashar Ali and Frischner for the heads up. These were reimbursements to Biden for car payments on a truck that Biden has paid while Hunter was changed career paths. Big ol' swing and a miss. Now, my biggest question for this is, why is the company paying this? And by the way, if the company's paying this, that would probably avoid a large amount of taxes. So this seems like this would be tax evasion as well. Hey! That's the kind of language that'll get you banned. I'm a Ford man here. You guys know that. The fact that these are coming out of the business account and not coming from his personal Venmo, that raises a lot of red flags to me. Again, there's either tax evasion going on with this or something else. Or again, maybe this is a payment under the table for foreign influence. I don't know, but something here doesn't add up. And again, they had this narrative out there pretty quick. Let's talk Chauvin. Got a bit of a slow start today, but we're starting to fly along here. We might get out on time yet tonight. Chauvin has been released from the hospital after a stabbing from Fox 9 KMSP out of the Twin Cities. An attorney for imprisoned former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin says that Chauvin has been released from the hospital after being stabbed last month. Chauvin, who's serving time for the murder of George Floyd, was stabbed 22 times by another inmate at a federal prison in Tucson on November 24th. According to the charges released this past Friday, Chauvin was stabbed by fellow inmate John Turskak, who used an improvised knife. In an update on Sunday after speaking with Chauvin's family, attorney Greg Erickson said Chauvin's condition has improved and he's been moved out of the trauma care unit at Tucson Hospital and back into prison custody for further care. Erickson said he's struggling to get updates on his client's condition from prison officials and adds that Chauvin's family has continued concerns about his safety behind bars. Now, so he's back out in Gen Pop, injured, number one, and the inmate is charged, according to the Associated Press. Inmate who stabbed Chauvin 22 times is charged with attempted murder, prosecutors say. John Turskak was charged with attempted murder a week after the November 24th attack at the Federal Correction Institute in Tucson. He told correctional officers he would have killed Chauvin had they not responded so quickly, prosecutors said. Turskak, who's serving a 30-year sentence for crimes committed while a member of the Mexican Mafia prison gang, told investigators he thought about attacking Chauvin for a month because he's a high-profile inmate, but denied wanting to kill him, prosecutors said. Well, number one, your previous statement goes completely against that. Turskak is accused of attacking Chauvin with an improvised knife in the prison law library around 12:30 p.m. on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. Correctional officers used pepper spray to subdue Turskak, prosecutors said. The Bureau of Prisons said employees performed life-saving measures. Chauvin was taken to the hospital for treatment. So, what's interesting about this, a lawyer for Turskak is not listed in court records. Turskak represented himself from prison on numerous court matters. But Turskak appears to have been an FBI informant on top of that. Former Mexican Mafia member Turskak stabbed Chauvin 22 times inside of a Tucson federal prison. Turskak, who is serving a 30-year sentence for crimes committed while working as an FBI informant, said he thought about stabbing the ex-cop convicted of killing black man George Floyd by kneeling on his neck during his arrest for months before the act. Turskak attacked Chauvin with an improvised knife with the intent to do bodily harm and to commit murder, according to the criminal complaint viewed by the Post. So, we have the FBI, who's already been involved in numerous things, now has one of their informants, who's only got a couple years left on his sentence, mysteriously is the one who took a shot at Chauvin in Gen Pop. Do you have any idea how many other people in Gen Pop would have been able to pull this off on a lower profile? But it has to be the FBI informant. Now, there is a difference between an FBI informant and an FBI agent. I will say this Turskak here, he's not an agent. He's not a law enforcement officer. He's not an undercover or anything else. Well, he wasn't undercover, but he was taken in and he was flipped by the FBI and said, hey, you do this for us and we'll make sure you get a reduced sentence. And if they can do that once, especially in a gang, where your life is literally at risk if they smell something dirty at all, hey, you do this for us and we'll make sure that you spend the rest of your prison life in a nice, cushy, low-security prison. Maybe we'll slip some extra cigarettes into your commissary or something like that, or some extra currency. You'll be able to get some extra food. We'll make this worth your while. To somebody who's already used to saying, yes, FBI, I will definitely do that. Just take care of me. Mogwa says, I love how they say improvised knife. On Black Friday, shanks are half off. Sales open at 2 a.m. Oh, Gen Pop is almost as popular as K-pop. Yeah, there do seem to be a lot of people in there. So, it's interesting how there's always an FBI connection. Even Steve Loves Ammo, says an FBI informant stabbed Chauvin 22 times in prison. Numerous informants were present on January 6th. And again, what Steve is saying is not that the people that were in the crowd were actual FBI agents, although I do believe that there were some of those in there as well. But people who were pulled aside at some point and said, hey, you do this for me, you do this for us. You disrupt them, you tell them we have to go into the Capitol. And we'll make sure your sentence is light when you do get popped. Or we'll make sure that some of the evidence gets forgotten about and you have a mistrial or something. FBI was involved in Crossfire Hurricane. Yes, we know that one. FBI said Hillary is not responsible for classified materials on a private server. So, definitely some things going on with a pattern there. Alright, let's do just a couple more things on the domestic side, and then we're going to do some foreign stuff here. Where are we at? 121. We got some time yet. Liz Warren in the news again. Senator Warren raises concerns with the Education Department over the return of student loan payments. From Katie LaBosco. Senator Warren and 3 other liberal senators are raising concerns about how the Department of Education and federal student loan servicers are handling the return of student loan payments after a 3+ year pandemic-related pause. Student loan payments resumed in October, but the 12-month on-ramp period provided by the DOE for struggling borrowers could experience implementation errors and potentially cause unanticipated consequences to borrowers' credit scores through next September. The senators warned in a letter sent to the Department of Education on Friday and first shared with CNN. The chaotic resumption of federal student loan payments has raised questions about the extent of errors and the measures being taken by the department to address these concerns and provide assistance to protected borrowers, said the letter, which was signed by Warren and Blumenthal and Chris Van Hollen of Maryland and Bernie Sanders. The senators have requested the Department of Education provide them with an audit of the number of borrowers who missed their October student loan payment, as well as to answer several questions about the agency's processes regarding the on-ramp period and its oversight of the student loan servicers. In a statement to CNN, the Department of Education said it received the letter and will review it. So, and that's, I mean, to me, there's an extent to where Warren has a leg to stand on. Now, I don't think that these things should have stopped to begin with. They really shouldn't have. But we're in the midst of the pandemic and governors are shutting down states and they're blaming Trump for it. And now Biden has to keep putting it off to run on over and over again. And I'm surprised, by the way, that they were able to get to a point where they were brought back out to the forefront. That might have been political suicide for Republicans by tying the budget to it, but we'll see what happens coming up here in November. The issue that I have with it, number one, is that it was so sudden that people didn't really get a lot of chance to make arrangements and amends for this. And yes, we are in a bit of an economic tumult right now. But as Razorfist pointed out in the video that he put out there, when we have a situation like this, Warren is doing exactly what Razorfist talked about in his video. They present you with an idea of what it is that you want, and then give you the shitty alternative, so then come out and say, hey, we'll save you by trying to convince the government to go back and cancel this again, and put this again at the taxpayer dole. Hey, don't you see how poorly this is working? You're destroying our economy right now. Let's just go back and cancel all these loans. Let's just get rid of these canceled and everything else. Because we screwed up the implementation so badly that it's just going to destroy our economy anyway. Mogwai says he stabbed him because he was told he would be working for Lindsey Graham, he thought he would get screwed, and well, we all know where this is going. Yes. A little bit of interest of Republicans acting like Democrats because they're in the vote minority, even though it's almost dead 50-50. Senate GOP stages hearing walkout to protest Supreme Court-related subpoenas. Midget B actually had a good take on this, and it didn't involve that nation in the Levant, but pointed out the fact that the only reason they can come back in and act like they're outraged over the Senate Judiciary calling in a major Republican donor is because Mitch McConnell and Ronna McDaniel decided not to fund candidates who actually probably could have won if they'd had better funding in districts, but because they were Trumpy, they couldn't be allowed to win, and instead he'd work with the Democrats. Tempers exploded at a Judiciary Committee meeting on Thursday before Democrats voted to subpoena a major conservative donor and a prominent conservative activist linked to the Supreme Court ethics scandals. The Republican members of the committee stormed out of the hearing in the Hart Building shortly before Judiciary Committee Chair Dick Durbin called a vote on authorizing the subpoenas. The motion passed with 11 Democratic votes. Not a single Republican was left in the room by the time the roll call ended. Durbin went ahead with a vote shortly before noon to prevent Republicans from delaying it until next week by invoking a rule to limit committee meetings to 2 hours. The meeting came after weeks of partisan fighting among members of the judiciary over plans to subpoena conservative donor Harlan Crow and activist Leonard Leo, the co-chairman of the Federalist Society, in response to reporting by ProPublica that revealed the two men played roles in taking conservative justices Thomas and Alito on luxury vacations. Durbin and Federal Court Subcommittee Chair Sheldon Whitehouse advanced subpoenas after Crow and Leo refused to cooperate with their investigation into Supreme Court ethics. Again, my question with this is, did they benefit from any decision that Thomas and Alito put forward? Because if they didn't, then you have no ethical violation, and you definitely are going to have to show me where they benefited from this. Where they directly benefited from a decision that was made because they paid them off. And yes, if you can show me that, a direct decision that directly affected them, then yes, let's go have the conversation. Alright, a little bit of Trump news. We've got a little Trump news, a little Wisconsin news, and a little bit of Israel news, and then we're done. Well, then we've got things I like and things that I hate. From the Associated Press, special counsel got a search warrant for Twitter to turn over info on Trump's account, documents say. And it's not just Trump's account, by the way, it's anybody who's ever commented on, followed, or liked a post from the Donald, which, by the way, is a lot of people in their sphere, too. I was a Trumpy, but one shot from Pfizer, and I was all Biden. Remember, Pfizer cares about you. That's right. Honk honk. From Alana Durkin-Richard. Jack Smith's team obtained a search warrant in January for records related to the former President Trump's Twitter account, and a judge levied a $350,000 fine on the company for missing the deadline to comply, according to a court document released on Wednesday. The new details were included in a ruling from the Federal Appeals Court in Washington over a legal battle surrounding the warrant that has played out under seal for months. The court rejected Twitter's claim that it should not have been held in contempt or sanctioned. Smith's team repeatedly mentioned Trump's tweets in an indictment unsealed last week that charges former president with conspiring to subvert the will of voters and clinging to power after he lost the 2020 election to Democrat Joe Biden. Honk honk. Trump pleaded not guilty to charges including conspiracy to defraud the United States and obstruction of Congress certification of Biden's win. Because he did neither of those things, by the way, he posted on his Truth Social platform Wednesday that the DOJ secretly attacked his Twitter account, and he characterized the investigation as an attempt to infringe on his bid to reclaim the White House in 2024, which it absolutely is. by the way. And going along with this, we have Tom Fitton. Breaking news that Jack Smith and Biden DOJ, with support of leftist DC judges, obtained sweeping subpoena on American citizens, including lists of Twitter users who have favorited or retweeted tweets posted by Trump's Twitter account, as well as all tweets that included the username associated with the account, i.e. mentions or replies, lends further urgency to Congress to defunding now this rogue operation. Call your congressman to share your views. 202-225-3121 is the one number, by the way, that I will give out on this video because it's Congress, it's not doxing. Let's listen. By the way, a reminder, if you are on Instagram, we're about to watch a video on the YouTube, which you can check out in the link in the bio. That'll go right to my YouTube page where you can see the live. And you're not going to be able to see the video that we're going to be able to see here. Let's listen.
I'm Tom Fitton. I'm president of Judicial Watch, America's leading government watchdog organization. We have a simple request for Congress: do your job. It's not enough to do investigations and reports. We need to stop the government corruption and abuse that is so concerning to the American people. In this new budget fight, or basically the old budget fight that we're being asked to pretend is new, there's an inflection point. Are we going to continue to fund Republicans in the House the wild abuse by the Biden administration of its political opponents, the mass censorship of tens of millions of Americans, the border invasion we've heard so much about, and the other wild abuses of power that are right now fully funded with Congress? And I don't know what we're talking about with a clean CR. I see a dirty CR, a CR that will fund the worst of dirty politics and corruption in our federal government. And there's a positive moral obligation right now, not next year, but right now, to stop the abuses, the effort to jail Trump on pretextual, unprecedented charges in a way never seen before in American history. An obligation to stop right now the Biden administration censorship of tens of millions of Americans. The obligation to stop right now the illicit use of tax monies to fund abortions in our military and elsewhere. We need to stop right now the attack on children through the promotion of transgender extremism. We need to stop right now the lack of serious investigation into the Biden administration corruption, specifically Biden corruption. We need a Justice Department or a special counsel that has confidence of the American people. All of these issues can be addressed in this continuing resolution, and if they don't want to address it, that suggests to me those who vote for it are on the side of corruption, and those who oppose it are on the side of justice. Thank you very much.
So yeah, if you ever even interacted, even in a negative light, with the Trump account, you're on this list. And you were investigated by Jack Smith. Let that one sink in for just a second. All right. Even interact. Oh, that was the wrong button. That was me. When Ed gets big, I'm really wanting to show me the invoice t-shirts. Yeah, I can do that one here. And I in my last Quora post, I actually pointed out what I would do if I made it big too. Like, one of the charities that I would do would be for student loans. Because I don't mind if private individuals and charities do it. It's just, I don't want the government to do it, because that means that everybody has to get involved in it. All right. Let's talk a bit about Act 10. So, I did a solo one-off video on this a couple days ago when this first came out. But I want to talk a bit more about this here. So, from the Associated Press, unions in Wisconsin sue to reverse collective bargaining restrictions on teachers and others. Scott Bauer, who is a regular Wisconsin reporter for the Associated Press. 7 unions representing teachers and other public workers in Wisconsin filed a lawsuit Thursday attempting to end the state's near total ban on collective bargaining for most public employees. By the way, this has absolutely nothing to do with public employees, but they're leading the charge off of this one because, well, they're on the public dole. The 2011 law, known as Act 10, has withstood numerous legal challenges over the past dozen years and was the signature legislative achievement for former Republican Governor Scott Walker, who used it to mount a presidential run. And thank God he failed, by the way. The latest lawsuit is the first since the Wisconsin Supreme Court flipped to liberal in August. But it was filed in a county circuit court. Dane, by the way. Unlike other major cases that have gone directly to the Supreme Court since its ideological shift, and will likely take more than a year to make its way up for a final ruling, which, by the way, will put it directly into an election year. Weird! The Act 10 law effectively ended collective bargaining for most public unions by allowing them to bargain solely over the base wage increases no greater than inflation. It also disallowed the automatic withdrawal of union dues, required annual recertification, votes for unions, and forced public workers to pay more for health insurance retirement benefits. Now, and again, this is all for public sector unions, for the police union, the fire union, and the teachers union, which they're going to vote to recertify no matter what. The law's introduction in 2011 spurred massive protests that stretched on for weeks. It made Wisconsin the center of a national fight over union rights, catapulted Walker onto the national stage, sparked an unsuccessful recall campaign, and laid the groundwork for his failed 2016 presidential bid. The law's adoption led to a dramatic decrease in union membership across the state. The lawsuit filed by teachers and other public workers on Thursday alleges that Act 10's exemption of some police, firefighters, and public safety workers from the bargaining restrictions violates the Wisconsin Constitution's equal protection guarantee. The complaint notes that those exempted from the restrictions endorsed Walker in the 2010 gubernatorial election, while those subject to the restrictions did not. Now that's actually important, because they might win on that. That was a guarantee, by the way, that that Walker got the support of these unions, the public sector ones, because the Republicans were trying to mount a law and order kind of thing. But that also might be the death nail to this, because that would violate equal protection. They might have it on a technicality. Stupid question here, but hey, I'm from South Carolina, and the 48th in education got me here. Is Wisconsin a right-to-work state? It is because of Act 10. It wasn't prior to that, but because of Act 10, it is a right-to-work state. A similar argument was made in a federal lawsuit alleging that Act 10 violated the equal protection guarantee in the U.S. Constitution. But a federal appeals court in 2013 said the state was free to draw a line between public safety and other unions. That might save it. And the following year again ruled the law was constitutional. The Wisconsin Supreme Court in 2014 also upheld the law as constitutional, rejecting a lawsuit brought by the teachers and Milwaukee public workers. That case raised different arguments than the current lawsuit. And in 2019, a federal judge rejected the lawsuit brought by two arms of the International Union of Operating Engineers and argued that the law violates free speech and free association under the First Amendment. Because it doesn't. The Wisconsin court should follow the lead of Missouri Supreme Court, which struck down a law resembling Act 10 in 2021. Based on similar arguments, Union Attorney Jacob Carabell said in a written statement. If the case reaches the Wisconsin Supreme Court, it's unclear who would actually hear it. So this is and I said this in my one-off video. This is what Protasewicz was put on the court to do. This is why they used Dan Kelly, and actually primaried Dan Kelly in against the objections of a lot of DeSantis Republicans in the state who wanted the woman, and I can't think of her name right off the bat either right now, but who wanted the woman who tried Darrell Brooks. What was her name? But they wanted her to run for the Supreme Court, and she was on the docket, but ultimately Dan Kelly got primaried in, and the media, of course, well, he's Dan Kelly. He's going to chain you to the stove because he's a Trump Republican, and your abortion rights are going to be gone. Protasewicz was not put on there to overturn the abortion law in Wisconsin. In fact, that's probably going to stay there for at least the next 10 election cycles, because Democrats can run on it to turn out the vote and then never fix it, and then just say over and over again, oh, the evil Republicans stopped us. She's there to find a fault in the Act 10 law in an election year, is what she's there for. Because in Act 10, we got right to work, which she's also there to overturn the right to work law in our state. And pump up union membership again, because that is the funding arm for the Democratic Party. It's all about the money. Show me the invoice. And she's been open again. This is the thing that just boggles my mind, by the way. She was open about how she would rule in ballot access cases, which is also the reason that she's on there. She's open about the fact she's going to strike them down, and she's been open about the fact that she intends to strike down Act 10 before she's ever heard an argument to it. By the way, things that were supposed to be disqualifying for Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Barrett on the U.S. Supreme Court. It's disqualifying. So, to try and put Wisconsin back in the iron grip of the AFL-CIO and get union membership back up, they're pushing this lawsuit out there, and they got Protasewicz onto the court so she can rule the way that she wants. And yes, we are right to work right now, which is why union membership is down. Because as many union places as there are in the state to work, you don't have to join the union to get there. You don't have to swallow your pride and say, man, I need the money, but I don't want to join the union, but man, do I need the money. As you had to do for many, many, many years in the state. All right. Let's talk Israel. We've got just a few minutes left. From Reuters, Israel presses ground offensive in southern Gaza, airstrikes intensify. So, and this is going to be, number one, I will point out the way that I always do into this. Everything that we see here is covered in the fog of war. Nobody knows what's going on over there except for the people on the ground in Gaza. We can speculate, but all these articles, the few that I'm going to touch over here, have a bias in them and have a specific outcome and reaction that they want to see from the people in them, inherent. So do keep that in mind as we read. Arafat Barbak and Mohammed Salem reporting. Intense Israeli airstrikes hit the south of Gaza Strip on Monday, killing and wounding dozens of Palestinians, including in areas where Israel has told people to seek shelter, residents and journalists on the ground said. Israeli troops and tanks also pressed the ground campaign against Hamas militants in the south of the enclave, after having largely gained control of the now devastated north. Early on Monday, Israel ordered Palestinians to leave parts of Gaza's main southern city, Khan Yunis, but residents said that areas that they'd been told to go were also coming under fire. And that's the hard part with this. Where do you go at this point? They come in at the beginning and say, move out of the north of Gaza, because we're going to bomb the shit out of it, go to the south. And now the call comes in after the ceasefire is over, the historic ceasefire that none of the paid Democratic shills are daring to talk about right now. It's over. We're back to the fighting. Now get out of here so we can carpet bomb where you live now. Well, where did they go? There's a wall to Egypt. Egypt won't take them. There's, number one, they have to go through troops to get to the north. That's number two, actually. They have to go through the IDF to get to the north. And there's no place for them to seek shelter in the north anymore because the IDF has already bombed the fucking shit out of it. I am not sympathetic to Hamas's regime and the fact that they hide behind civilians, but I also have to point out the obvious question of where the hell do you expect them to go at this point? Israel's military posted a map on social media platform X with around a quarter of Khan Yunis marked off in yellow as territory that must be evacuated at once. 3 arrows pointed south and west, telling people to head towards the Mediterranean coast and towards Rafah, a major town near the Egyptian border. Desperate Gazans in Khan Yunis packed their belongings and headed towards Rafah. Most were on foot, walking past ruined buildings in solemn and silent procession. But the head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees in Gaza, Thomas White, said people in Rafah were themselves being forced to flee. People are pleading for advice on where to find safety, and we have nothing to tell them, he said on X. Yeah, I wouldn't know where to tell you either, honestly. That's a situation that I would never want to be in, because I wouldn't be able to tell you what to do. And this with the fog of war, this is me assuming that everything that they say in these articles is true. Taking the fog of war out of this for a second, what do you tell these people? And even in ways to go and try to get them out of there, the Wall Street Journal reporting, Israel weighs a plan to flood Gaza tunnels with seawater. Now, these are, if we assume everything is true, then these are supposed to be refugee tunnels, but we've also got right-wing outlets that'll tell us that these are terrorist tunnels that Hamas used to go back and sneak suicide bombers into Israel. Which may be the reason, of course, that Israel is planning to go back out and flood them. But again, you've told these people to go back out and evacuate, to get out of there, to go find somewhere else to be so they could bomb the shit out of your buildings. Where do you want them to go? Move could drive out Hamas fighters, but threatens to foul Gaza's freshwater supply and damage infrastructure. Yes, there's that aspect of it too, but I think the bombings are going to damage infrastructure more, but more importantly, take out an important escape route for the people you've just told to evacuate. From Nancy A. Youssef, Warren B. Strobel, and Gordon Lubold. Israel has assembled a system of large pumps it could use to flood Hamas's vast network of tunnels under the Gaza Strip with seawater, a tactic that could destroy the tunnels and drive the fighters from their underground refuge, but also threatens Gaza's water supply, U.S. officials said. The Israeli Defense Forces finished assembling large seawater pumps, roughly 1 mile north of the El Shati refugee camp around the middle of last month. Each of the last 5 pumps can draw water from the Mediterranean and move thousands of cubic meters of water per hour into the tunnels, flooding them within weeks. Israel first informed the U.S. of the option early last month, prompting the discussion weighing the feasibility and effect on the environment against the military value of disabling the tunnels, officials said. There's a really good episode of MASH where Hawkeye and the Chaplain are talking about the statement, "War is hell." If you've never seen it, I recommend it. It's very true. Yes, I have seen it, by the way. And yes, war is hell, and the people who report on the war have an agenda. They do. That's why I've refrained from talking about Israel and Gaza as much as I can, because I understand what the fog of war is. And yes, it is absolute hell. In fact, the last article that we have is a Twitter video of Jayapal telling us that the rape isn't so bad because there are worse things happening from Israel. But just to put the spotlight again, before we go into that, on our involvement over there, 3 commercial ships hit by missiles in Houthi attack in Red Sea. U.S. warship downs 3 drones. John Gambrill from the Associated Press reporting, ballistic missiles fired from Yemen's Houthi rebels struck 3 commercial ships on Sunday in the Red Sea, while a U.S. warship shot down 3 drones in self-defense. During the hours-long assault, The U.S. military said the Iranian-backed Houthis claimed 2 of the attacks. The strikes marked an escalation of a series of maritime attacks in the Middle East, linked to the Israel-Hamas war, as multiple vessels found themselves in the crosshairs of single Houthi assault. For the first time in the conflict, the U.S. vowed to consider all appropriate responses in the wake of the attack, specifically calling out Iran after tensions have been high for years over Tehran's rapidly advancing nuclear program. These attacks represent a direct threat to international commerce and maritime security. The U.S. military Central Command said in a statement, they have jeopardized the lives of international crews representing multiple countries around the world. Now, this is important because this is going to be the situation that's going to get us involved. My friend Seawall, who is a military historian, amateur in and of himself, likes to talk about the fact that the U.S. is guaranteeing all the shipping lanes in the world because we have one of the only major navies in the world. They run escorts and they protect the ships that are doing international commerce. Most any of the other big countries in the world can't get out of brown water or have scrapped their submarine forces so badly that they're barely worth talking about. And it's like Styx says too, it's not the oil dollar, it's the aircraft carrier dollar, because our country is guaranteeing all the shipping lanes. But the problem with that, it's a good thing that we at least have a world police that's guaranteeing that these things get there without getting pirated everywhere that they go. And this is coming from somebody who's anti-world police. But the problem that comes and arises with that is that anybody who comes back out and attacks a ship intending to either pirate or, in a case like the Houthis, try to get the U.S. involved, doesn't have far to go find an American target to strike, and then, oops, hey, now we have to go back and retaliate against this. So this is also going to be worth watching here. My big fear is that we're going to be drawn into this conflict because of the adjacency of us being out on the sea. The Mogwai says, in the Navy, yes, you can sail the 7 seas. In the Navy, you can put your mind at ease. In the Navy, come on people, fall and make a stand. In the Navy, in the Navy. I know that song. I think that song is hilarious, by the way. I don't take the hard stand of the Village People are gay, even though they have put out arguably one of the biggest gay anthems in the world. But that song is hilarious. The Navy song, In the Navy, yes, absolutely. Alright, and our last one, before we go into things I like and things that I hate, we have Pramila Jayapal, Aviva Klompa, saying, here's a member of Congress telling us that since Israel isn't well liked, the Israeli women who were raped by Hamas don't deserve the support of progressives. And for good measure, Jayapal adds, rape happens in war, because war is hell. However, we have to be balanced about bringing the outrage against the Palestinians. I'm going to paraphrase what Aviva's last sentence on here is. That's Jayapal saying, how short was her skirt?
I want to ask you about sexual violence. And it's kind of remarkable that this issue hasn't gotten enough attention globally. Widespread use of rape, brutal rape, sexual violence against Israeli women by Hamas. I've seen a lot of progressive women, generally speaking, they're quick to defend women's rights and speak out against using rape as a weapon of war, but downright silent on what we saw on October 7th and what might be happening inside Gaza right now to these hostages. Why is that?
I mean, I don't know that that's true. I think we always talk about the impact of war on women in particular. In fact, I remember 20 years ago I did a petition around the war in Iraq.
Have you talked about it since October 7th?
Absolutely, and I've condemned what Hamas has done. I've condemned specifically all of the actions. Absolutely, the rape, of course. But I think we have to remember that Israel is a democracy. That is why they are a strong ally of ours. And if they do not comply with international humanitarian law, they are bringing themselves to a place that makes it much more difficult strategically for them to be able to build the kinds of allies to keep public opinion with them. And frankly, morally, I think we cannot say that one war crime deserves another. That is not what international humanitarian law says.
Okay, with respect, I was just asking about the women, and you turned it back to Israel. I'm asking you about Hamas. In fact,
I already answered your question, Dana. I said it's horrific, and I think that rape is horrific, sexual assault is horrific. I think that it happens in war situations. Terrorist organizations like Hamas obviously are using these as tools. However, I think we have to be balanced about bringing in the outrages against Palestinians. 15,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes, 3/4 of whom are women and children.
And it's horrible, but you don't see Israeli soldiers raping
well, Dana, I
Palestinian
think
women.
we're not.
I will push back on Dana and say that I'm willing to bet that there's more of that happening than we hear about. I'll say that. But yes, Mogwai, one of these war crimes is not like the other. The Mogwai says my goal tonight is to get near that line of I can't say that on Twitch. I think Representative Jayapal got that. I think she got to that line. And just how short were the skirts of those Israeli women, by the way? Were they actually asking for it? Did they have it coming just because of national origin? I can't believe it, actually. I really can. Because these people change their stance whenever it's politically convenient. I was just thinking about that the other day. There's a thread on X that I'm tagged in because I commented on it, and I've had like 300 notifications from this that I don't give a flying fuck about over the past 24 hours. Because my comment on that thread is dozens and dozens and dozens of comments back. But I've got people in that thread who are screaming some of the most anti-Semitic things that you can have. And they're progressives. They're Democrats who were just telling us not that long ago that the most evil thing that you could possibly be is an anti-Semite against Israel. If you were that, then you were one of the evil Trumpers who are conveniently always masked and gathering in the streets. You'll notice those things stopped, by the way. Or the coverage of them at least stopped. The minute this whole thing happened in Palestine, we stopped seeing the big marches everywhere of the masked Nazis who are apparently DeSantis supporters. Those went away in a hurry. Alright. That is all the news that I have for the day, but we're going to finish out with things I like and things that I hate. I'm going to skip rules of acquisition tonight, just based on the fact that we are running short on time. We're actually a couple minutes from overtime right now. But let's do a few things that I like and a few things that I hate before we head out of here for the night. So, things that I like, number one. Those of you who can see in the corner there, even though it's shrunk down or we're here from the beginning, may notice that there is something missing behind me. If you're in the Discord, you already know this, and if you're listening on the audio platform, well, you can't see it anyway. My own X here that I have, where I said, so when everything shut down, I vowed to grow out my hair to make a wig for a cancer patient, which I've talked about on this channel before, by the way. 3 years later, while I won't name the charity because, somewhere down the road, people are going to find this and they're going to find out that I have vaguely conservative views about how I run my own house, even though, as I always say, I can't be a conservative because I don't want to force these views on other people. They would still find a reason to go back and dox and force the burning of my donation. And publicly out this company because they worked with an evil right-winger. Oh my god! So I'm not going to name them. But I gave enough for 4 wigs. I gave 12.5 inches of hair this past Saturday. So you can see in the picture here. They sectioned it off because they're going to make it into 4, so... And it's an interesting feeling. It's very different. I keep trying to pull my ponytail out when I go to bed because I do keep my hair tied up, or did keep my hair tied up almost all the time. I never, ever, ever wore it down, even when I was at home by myself, just because it got in the way all the time. But I did. I took 3 years, and I grew enough hair to make 4 wigs, and I feel fantastic about it. And I hope these people, you know, it is a children's cancer charity too, so, and I picked them specifically because they don't charge the patients for the wigs. I didn't do Locks for Love because specifically they charge people for the wigs. And again, I'm not going to name who I worked with, but I will name who I didn't work with for the reason I didn't work with them. Locks for Love charges the patients who get their wigs. They charge them money. I don't like that. If I'm going to give this away for free, then you're going to give it away for free. That's what charity is all about. You can find other donations in there to go back and pay the people who make them for you. I understand you have labor to make these things, but there's other ways of funding than charging the patient who's already at their wit's end trying to pay medical bills. So that's why I chose the charity I worked with. I feel fantastic. I feel great. I love giving to charity. I always have. I need to do it more often. I really do. Oh, come on, Mogwai. This is going back to where we were talking about earlier, but come on, Mogwai. Did we get raided? No, I thought we did. A bunch of people suddenly showed up in the counter. All right, other things that I like. The natural progression of the sentence, come back with a warrant. This is out of, I believe, yes, Arlington, Virginia. BNO News says, breaking: house explodes when police approach Arlington, Virginia home to execute a search warrant. Ha! Come and find the evidence now, coppers.
Holy fucking shit! Get the fuck out of here! Oh.
Now, in reality, I don't know what happened with this, and of course somebody lost their home over this. But it does seem like this was a retaliatory event to make sure that whatever was in this house, good or bad, was never found. I do not know the details behind the warrant. I don't know what they were looking for. I don't know where they were going. In Virginia, I would guess it's probably less than a murder or something horrific like that, and it's probably more of being a dissident of some sort. But yeah, again, that just seems like the natural progression beyond come back with a warrant, copper. My former co-host and advocate for liberty, Libertarian Redhead, pointed out, and I found this like right before we went live too, by the way, that this is Happy 21st Amendment Day, which I kind of knew when I saw the sign what this was for, but December 5th, 1933, 90 years ago today, the 21st Amendment, the repeal of prohibition, was ratified December 5th, 1933. It repealed the previous 18th Amendment, which had established a nationwide ban on the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcohol. Let's get a few more of these things repealed too, as long as we're at it here. And some laws once they go too. I hope you guys enjoy a drink and a spirit today. Even though I have to work tomorrow, I'm going to enjoy a spirit in memory of what's happening there, of what happened 90 years ago today in history. And I hope that you have a happy 21st Amendment Day. Speaking of people who are red-haired and enjoy liberty, the other red-headed libertarian, Josie, TRHL official. I looked at this and I thought to myself, This needs a little bit more airplay. So this is something that Josie has posted before, but this is backed by popular demand. I present you the Bill of Rights written in a way that anyone can understand it. These rights are inalienable and endowed unto you by your Creator simply by the virtue of being human. So let's read the revised, non-legalese version of the Bill of Rights. First Amendment. You have the right to speak freely, practice your religion freely, gather freely, report the news freely, protest freely, and express yourself freely without the fear of government silencing you. You may freely tell the government what they are doing or not doing that pisses you off. Also, the government is forbidden from creating a state religion. Second Amendment. You are guaranteed two fundamental obligations. One is the right of a militia or the body of people to protect the free state, and two, the right of the armed individual to defend themselves. The government can't take your guns, and the militias must always be prepared. Third Amendment. The government cannot place soldiers in your home and force you to take care of them. Fourth Amendment. By the way, in the Third Amendment, they do have language that says, in peacetime. In wartime, all bets are off. That needs to be adjusted. Fourth Amendment. The government cannot search you or take your things without a warrant issued by a judge and secured by evidence. Fifth Amendment. You have 5 rights or protections here. The right to a jury trial when you're charged with a crime, protection against double jeopardy, tried for the same crime twice, protection against all self-incrimination, testifying against yourself, the right to a fair trial and the presumption of innocence, and the protection against the taking of property by the government without compensation. Sixth Amendment. You have 8 entitlements here. You have the right to transparency and timelines in a trial, an impartial jury where you are charged, and for the district to be alerted, you have the right to know your charges, face your accuser, gather your own witnesses, and have an attorney. The Sixth Amendment is one of the biggest ones that's under attack right now, too, by the way. Seventh Amendment. You have the right to a jury trial in federal courts with civil cases where the claim exceeds a certain dollar value. Eighth Amendment. The government is prohibited from charging you unreasonable fines and torturing you. Also something that needs to be addressed. Ninth Amendment. Just because the founders didn't write it down doesn't mean it's not a natural right. All unlisted rights belong to the people. And the 10th Amendment. The powers of the federal government are delegated to what is written down in the Articles of the Constitution. If it's not written there, then that power belongs to the states or the people. There's so much conversation about the government gave you the right to free speech. They gave you the right to keep and bear arms. They gave you the right to a speedy trial. No. It was written to restrain the federal government. Although many of these amendments apply to the states too, whether in their own constitutions as per the 14th Amendment or the Supremacy Clause. And you should all carry a copy of this right in your pocket. Alright, a couple more things that I like. So, I found this on Instagram actually, but I found the YouTube video. An absolutely hilarious song that becomes more and more true as we go. Taylor Hawkins, a comedian, and this is from about 11 years ago, telling us that the government can. I don't know if I'm going to get copyright pop for this, but it's hilarious, so we're going to do it anyway. The Government Can by Tim Hawkins.
I do. I care about future generations. I care about things. I want to do a song right now. I actually wrote this in April, and I'm going to keep singing it for a while because it makes me feel good. And so let's do it. Hi, everybody. Gather round. I'm here to give you anything you like. You want free college, energy, mortgages, whatever you like. You have come to the right place. Why? I'll tell you why. Who can take your money? Who can take your money? With a twinkle in their eye. A twinkle in their eye. Take it all away and give it to some other guy. The government. The government can. And who can tax the sunrise? Who can tax the trees? Well, bet you're on a business and collect up all the fees. The government. Oh, the government can. And the government can, 'cause they mix it up with lies and make it all taste good. The government takes everything we make to pay for all of their care, climate change, pollution. Just throw away the Constitution. I wrote that, thank you. Who can give a bailout? Tell us to behave. And make the founding fathers roll over in their grave. I don't care if you hate me, I'm going to sing it anyway. Oh, the government can. And the government can, cause they mix it up with lies and make it all yummy, 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 yummy. The government takes everything we make. They're all power hungry and malicious. Their economics are fictitious. Soon we'll have to eat our dishes. Chicken, how's that taste, kids? Delicious. Who can be a failure? In so many ways. And instead of getting fired, hey, we'll give ourselves a raise. Kentucky, you know what I'm talking about. Oh, the government can. And the government can go to mix it up. I did the choreography myself. And your Uncle Sam can, cause he mixes it with eyes to make himself look good. And I feel so good, cause the government says I should.
This came out 11 years ago, and this just gets more and more true with time. I would argue that this is more true than it was when he wrote this song and put it back out. Actually, according to this one, because this was a recording before the live show that we did, 14 years ago. So 2009. And this is arguably more true than it is now. Alright, couple more things that I like, and then we'll do some things that I hate. And spoiler alert, most of the things that I hate, with the exception of one that I found at the very last minute, are all financial related. Imagine that. Alright. ABC News, a follow-up to one that we did last week. Exploding wild pig population on western Canadian prairie threatens to invade the U.S. Translation: we're about to get some very, very exotic bacon. Like, the big concern about these things is that they've bred with domesticated sows and boars, and they've made these oversized wild pigs. They get the size of the domesticated ones, plus the strength and the toughness and the ill temper of the wild ones. And again, all I keep hearing is exotic bacon. And now they're coming to like North Dakota, Minnesota. I'm willing to bet they're going to come across the river into Wisconsin. And I'm just saying to myself, hey, do we have to have a season, or can we just, you know, because I'm all for carrying a bigger sidearm than I normally do and taking care of the problem as it goes. So that is coming down here. And the last thing that I like today comes to us from Fox News. BLM leader endorses Trump for 2024, accuses Dems of racist policies. We're not stupid. You know, we were convenient at the time, but we're not stupid. A BLM leader threw his support behind former President Trump in the 2024 race for the White House, accusing Democrats of racist policies that are working against the black communities. Mark Fisher, who's the co-founder of the BLM Rhode Island, joined Fox and Friends to discuss why some black voters are leaving the Democrats as they contemplate who they will vote for in the 2024 election. Now, is this going to affect the entire community? Probably not. But there is only a small amount of the black vote that gets torn away from the Democrat Party before they make it next to impossible to win elections again. I don't know if we're going to get there for 2024, but socioeconomically down the road, that's going to be something to watch for. It's the duplicity of the Democrats, the hypocrisy, Fisher told Lawrence Jones Tuesday. We're not stupid. The brothers are not stupid. We understand when someone's for us and when someone is not. It's obvious the Democrat Party is not for us. The policies actually strike at the heart of the black family and the nuclear family, he continued. Fisher argued the Democrats don't value the black vote during the interview with the Kim Iverson show earlier this month, while praising Trump for advocating policies to uplift the community. And there's nothing that he's saying that's wrong, either, by the way. Now, will it be accepted? Probably not. Are there already 1,000 articles out there trying to point out the white supremacy of Mark Fisher? Probably. Are there 1,000 Cope articles calling this guy an Uncle Tom, a race traitor, or a bunch of other horrific names I can't say on YouTube? Probably. It's going to be a house something, I'll tell you that. But I mean, we're going to start to see the same thing if we get down into the Ben Carson being in the race. You don't think that the C word and the N word are going to be commonplace and allowed on YouTube when they start to go talk about him, when he starts to become a mainliner? I'm surprised that they didn't do that when Tim Scott got in. Let's be realistic here, but it's the nature of what we have going on here. So now let's do a few things that I hate. And the first thing that I hate today is going to come to us from CBS News. Maybe. But it might not load. Let's throw a refresh on this. I need to get more RAM. My poor CPU is trying to cover up what my RAM can't. Did CBS take this article down? Let's do this. Really? I've never had a problem with this before. I got a feeling that there's something else going on out there, because I suddenly can't archive articles. Especially from one that may have been archived numerous times here before. So we'll come back to that and see if that pops back up. But we'll go on to the Daily Mail, which is archived, by the way, and I have open. Safety certificate be damned. Let's go check this one again. Alright, CBS News. I'll fix this one next time. Americans need an extra $11,400 today just to afford the basics. Republican analysis finds. Now, of course, Republican analysis, so it's biased. They're just trying to make the Biden admin look bad. Let's read what CBS has to say. The typical American household must spend an additional $11,434 annually just to maintain some standard of living enjoyed in January 2021, right before inflation soared to 40-year highs, according to recent analysis of government data. Such figures underscore the financial squeeze many families continue to face, even as the rate of U.S. inflation recedes, and the economy by many measures remains strong, with jobless rates at 2 decades low. The analysis from Republican members of the U.S. Senate Joint Economic Committee taps government data such as the Consumer Price Index and Consumer Expenditure Survey to examine the impact of the inflation state by state. And CBS News is putting this out here to try to discredit it. That's the reason I put this on things that I hate. Number one, because we actually do have to do this, and this is correct, by the way. But CBS is also putting this out here to try to discredit it. That's why they say, according to Republican sources, a Republican study does this. Look, you can sit here and paint this as partisan all that you want. People, Democrats and Republicans, go to the grocery store. They put gas in their cars. Gas has been down for the past couple weeks, I will admit to that. And it's been kind of nice. But it's a bit of too little too late at this point, and people are already outstretched, taking out second jobs to go back and afford groceries. Have you seen the average grocery bill? I can't get out of our local Woodman's for under $60 at this point. And it's just me. I'm not bringing up a family. I don't know how people with 5, 6, 10 kids do it. I know my brother-in-law's got a really, really good job, business owner, so he's his own boss, but still. With my sister and the 3 kids, I don't know how they do it. I'm not even going to lie to you about it. I don't know how they do it. Because my stuff has gone up. And what's interesting about that is financially, I feel like I'm in the exact same place that I was a year ago. And I made $14,000 more this year. My income went up $14,000 this year, and I feel like I'm in the exact same place that I was when I moved. Not to mention the loss of buying power that I had from the year before, beginning of 2021 into 2022. More things that I hate here from the Daily Mail. IRS penalty for underpaying estimated taxes jumps to 8% of the shortfall from 3% 2 years ago, with freelancers and the self-employed most at risk, i.e. political dissidents. What's so funny about the Democrat Party is they were so against big business for so long. Now it's the small business owners who are under attack for everything. If all the small businesses go away, where else are you going to go to work except for the big business that can afford to go back and do this? The more I see of Democrat policy, and again, knowing what it was like to be a Democrat in the 90s and 2000s, the more it looks to me like they're taking the exact opposite stance as what they were when I was voting Democrat. The IRS penalty for underpayment of estimated taxes is up sharply this year, with self-employed and freelance workers at the biggest risk of getting hit. The penalty, calculated quarterly based on Federal Reserve's benchmark rate, hits 8% in October 1st, up from just 3% in early 2021 when Fed rates were near zero. Now, some of this, by the way, is dependent on what the Fed rate is, but regardless of what it is, this is coming for people who are already either struggling and can't go back and pay their entire tax bill because they're freelancing because they can't get a job anywhere else, or again because they got audited, found out that they did something wrong, and now they owe a bunch of extra taxes that they can't pay because the economy's fallen out from under them. Make no mistake, this is for political dissidents. This is not for a big billionaire business person who's just going to come back and write a check and make this go away. So, I hope that when audit time comes, you have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed, because they're going to be looking for people to hit with this 3 to 8%. Let's do just a couple more here. This one. And this, I archived this one too, by the way. The Atlantic. Inflation is your fault. Spike Cohen put this out as a screenshot the other day, saying that he wouldn't give a click to the idiots who wrote this. I archived it, and it was already archived, so I got the initial click, obviously, from clicking into it and getting the address, but that was it. The TLDR of this article, by the way, and I'm not going to go through this at this point, is that inflation is happening because you're buying things. If you would just stop and refuse to buy things, the prices would go down. The problem is that a lot of people in the middle to lower middle classes have already stopped buying things because they can't afford anything but the essentials, the food, maybe a Christmas gift here and there. I see more and more 3, 4, 5-year-old phones out there than I did in the entire Trump presidency, where people were also eager to go back and get the new one every couple of years. People are already refusing to buy stuff because they can't. The next step, if you're trying to tell us not to buy stuff because the inflation is too high because we keep buying stuff, my next step is, okay, then I'm just going to stop eating. Because a lot of times that's all that we have left. I did buy a few used video games this year because I did have a little bit of disposable income and I wanted to replace a few things, but definitely nothing new. I mean, I'm telling you right now, I still want to go play the new Mario RPG remake. I can't afford, well, can afford a Nintendo Switch, but I can put that money into a house or a project car or more food. That money is earmarked elsewhere. I can't actually go out and buy it like cash right now, but that money's earmarked for other shit right now because that's more important, and I'm in a position where I have to make that decision. Again, in spite of making $14,000 more over the course of a year than I did the year prior. And we're going to have to say goodbye to Instagram a little bit early here because we're running out of battery. So thank you guys for joining me over there. Check out the replay later on, but my phone just hit 5%. So we're going to cut that off right out and finish out these last few things that I hate. We've got another 81 million votes instant here. Simon Tiba, breaking. President Biden refers to unknown Congressman Trump. This is a very short, out-of-context clip, I will admit, but it's still hilarious.
Instead of cutting them, or like Congressman Trump and Boebert want to do. Instead of cutting them, or like Congressman Trump and Boebert want to do.
And Boebert want to do. He knew he fucked up there too. He knew that he let his mouth go back out and run and get out in front of him. Number one, President Trump, former President Trump, who he was most likely referring to, has no power whatsoever to make a decision. So I don't know why you're coming out here trying to demonize him, but number two, he's not a congressman. He's never been a congressman. He's only held one political office. 81 million votes. Gretchen Whitmer into the news. We've got a short video with this one too, but the tweet that goes with this. From the tip of the UP to the shores of Lake Erie, Michigan is brimming with unique shops and passionate entrepreneurs. So why not give a gift that's one of a kind and support your community? Shop small, shop local. Let's spread some holiday cheer. I'll listen to the video and then I will give my take on this.
Happy holidays, Michigan. As you're looking for that perfect present for a family, friend, crush, or workplace frenemy, support a small business right here in Michigan. Our state has so many strong, vibrant small businesses in every region. There's definitely something out there for someone on your list. Shop local, save more, support your community.
Disclaimer, shop local as long as there's not a disease out there with a 99.9999998% survival rate, because otherwise the only place that you're going to be allowed to go to is a big box store and a big business. We will shut down anything local because it's not necessary. This is the person, by the way, who led the nation in killing small and local business because of COVID restriction. Telling you now to go back and shop local. All right. In more economic news, Biden has greenlit a $3 billion for Las Vegas to California high-speed rail, which is going to go get handed out to his union buddies and wind up costing well more than this. Nick Robertson reporting. The Biden admin announced a $3 billion in funding Tuesday for the Brightline West Rail project, covering a quarter of the cost for a high-speed rail line planned to run from Vegas to LA. A bipartisan group of lawmakers from Nevada and California have pushed for the federal grant for months, pitching Brightline West as a needed economic driver. This historic high-speed rail project will be a game-changer for Nevada's tourism economy and transportation, said Jackie Rosen of Nevada. It'll bring more visitors to our state, reduce traffic on I-15, create thousands of good-paying jobs, and decrease carbon emissions, all while relying on local union labor. So this is a handout to his union buddies. The $3 billion grant is funded from the bipartisan infrastructure law, Rosen said. That was anything but bipartisan, by the way. Brightline, the only private passenger rail company operating a high-speed service in the country, requested $3.75 billion for for the project. Out of an estimated $12 billion cost, the company launched the high-speed Orlando to Miami service, the first of its kind, earlier this year. The government has taken your money and given it to a private company. A company that handles $12 billion at a time. Do we go back and ask Tim Hawkins who can again? Who can take your money? I'm not going to go back to try find the track for this right now. And give it all away. I'm not against rail, by the way. I'm 100% not against rail. But the fact that it has to be subsidized so hard, number one, that's an argument against it for myself. And I'm still questioning whether or not there are going to be enough people who utilize the service to make it worthwhile to make it operate. If Brightline wanted to make this rail, and they were, of course, bringing in enough of a customer base to do so, then I would say, hey, I might consider investing in your company. But the fact that they're running out to the government for the investment tells me that they don't think they're going to make a profit off of this. They don't. They absolutely don't. And of course, with the government grant, they can also rely on eminent domain to get people to give up their land too. So instead of going back and buying it at fair market value. So there's that aspect of things too. God, isn't government wonderful? And the last one, a little bit of culture war stuff here. Not financial this time. And this to me coming to, by the way, as a Trek fan myself. Veritas Libertas with a tweet that says, she liked Star Trek. I said, me too. Our values can't be far apart. And I got a novel of right back. This is all timer. So we've got people, I think this is out on Tinder. It looks like, by the way, she blocked him and then unblocked him because it looks like after he said that our values can't be that far apart, she had unmatched and then rematched with him. So he says that they both like Trek, so their values can't be that far apart. This is her response. LOL, absolutely not. If you can't see that it's impossible to be empathetic or intelligent or just a good fucking human while also being conservative in this day and age, then you have not only missed the core message of Star Trek in a way that Roddenberry would be ashamed of, but you're either an idiot or a shitty dude or both. If you don't identify as either of things, I'm sorry, bro, but I've got news for you. What a bitch. My politics are informed by my values. So are mine. For me, and most people, politics actually impact our lives and experiences. No, they don't. I'm going to tell you right out, and this is actually counterintuitive to my business plan as being a person who broadcasts about politics for part of my living. Most of you are not affected by politics. Most of you are not affected by the day-to-day goings in and outs of what happens in DC. And if we got these idiot Democrats out of office, fewer of you would be affected by this. And it wouldn't, if fewer of you would be impacted by this. And experiences, and the depth and breadth of our legal rights. I said lefty politics were non-negotiable, and I meant it. I'm only responding to you, which goes along with the concept of she unmatched him and then matched him again, to go back and give the novel, as he said. Because so many conservative dudes choose to ignore that shit and send me some corny fucking message anyway, which is A, disrespectful, and B, don't act like you're not actively harming me. Oh my God. You're not actively harming me and everyone I care about Grow the fuck up and do better. Well, I think by getting as far away from you as he can, he is going to be doing better because you sound vaccinated, lady. Oh my God, do you sound vaccinated. Alright, and on that dour note, we're done. We're out of here. It was an interesting show. It ran a little bit longer than I thought it was going to, but not as long as it's been in the past, so I'm still thinking that we are going to have to at some point split ourselves off into a couple days a week. I don't think we have enough news going on to go a full 5 just yet. But I think as we get deeper into election year, unfortunately, we are going to wind up being back in a 5-day-a-week stream. But that'll be for time to tell. Thank you everybody who came by and hung out and chatted out. A lot of lurkers today. Thank you to the Mogwai for at least trying to get us back on the radar for everything. And everybody, of course, for coming in and checking out the replays on Rumble, on Twitch, on YouTube, and on the audio platforms as well. Let's throw some outro music up and let's head out of here for the day. There's my outro. Let's kill the other background music. There we go. All right, so thanks everybody who came by, hung out. It's been a great time, fantastic time. We had a lot of fun tonight, a lot of laughs, a lot of things like that, and hope to see you guys here next time. Back here tomorrow for Final Fantasy X. Looks like one night this week we'll be doing the Republican debate again, so I will check back on that, find the times, and yes, I will stream that because, hey, we all need an outlet to come back out and complain about this without having to listen to Crowder scream over everything. That was one of the things I was most disappointed about because I couldn't find a regular stream of the Gavin Newsom-DeSantis debate, just Crowder's stream, and man, I forgot how insufferable he actually is. And I couldn't hear most of what DeSantis and Newsom said because he was talking over it. So I will have that available for you here on the night that it is. I believe it's going to be Thursday, but check the Twitter and the Discord for updates on that. Take care. Have a good night. We will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until tomorrow, or until next time rather, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.